Почитувани гледачи, добро вечер, добро дојдовте во уште едно издание на емисијата 10 минути. Наш вечерашен гостин е амбасадорот на Европската унија во Скопје, господинот Дејвид Гир. Господине амбасадоре, најнапред ви благодарам што ја прифативте поканата да бидете дел од ова интервју. Господин амбасадоре, колку случувањата со Сашо Мијалков, неговото бегство па појавување влие врз угледот на Северна Македонија во очите на Европската унија во насока на борбата против криминалот, корупцијата, владењето на правото, особено ако се знае дека претходно избега и Никола Груевски. Дали на македонскиот правосуден систем му е потребна целосна реформа? Дали ова ќе се одрази негативно во следниот извештај за Северна Македонија?
Well, thank you very much. Obviously, we're following developments very closely. And as you know, we don't comment on investigations or judicial proceedings in individual cases. This said, we have consistently underlined the importance of accountability for all wrongdoing, including in wiretap cases. And as regards the cases which were initiated by the Special Prosecutor's Office, the way in which they're handled, the outcome is going to be important in building public confidence in the judicial process and in ending impunity. Now, as regards the European Union, as you know, last October, the European Commission published one of its regular reports on progress in implementing reforms in North Macedonia. And in that report, it said there had been steady progress in the area of rule of law, including judicial reform, the fight against corruption and organized crime. But while it notes steady progress, it also points out areas where further progress is needed and a need for an intensification of efforts. So this is still very important. And I think in this process of taking forward the rule of law and judicial reform, it's very important that the authorities reach out across the political divide and that all parts of society, all institutions are involved in these efforts.
Пред само неколку дена излезе извештајот на Transparency International за Северна Македонија, која се најде на 111-тото место на листата за индексот на перцепцијата на корупцијата. Каде властите во Северна Македонија грешат и што мора да направат?
Yeah, Transparency International provides I think a useful snapshot of perceptions of corruption in North Macedonia, and of course the results are disheartening. This said, we need to put it together with other reports, both by governments and by the non-governmental sector, on progress in the area of combating corruption. Now, for the European Union, again, let's go back to the European Commission's report from last October. And in that report, it said North Macedonia was moderately prepared in the efforts to combat corruption. It recognized good progress, in particular in the consolidation of its track record in combating high-level cases of corruption, and commended in particular the work of the State Commission for the Prevention of Corruption and Organized Crime. But of course, there are also some more negative signals. For example, the fact that the Office of the Public Prosecutor against corruption and organized crime lacks the human resources and the other financial resources to do its job is an issue of concern. So, of course, once again, this is why it's important that we take a comprehensive approach to corruption and to combating corruption. There needs to be in place, obviously, the legal framework, but there also needs to be the mechanisms of enforcement to ensure that that legal framework is given real effect. And also there needs to be a change in public attitude in the sense that people need to trust that corruption will be acted upon and it will not be tolerated.
Северна Македонија стана членка на НАТО, но не доби датум за почеток на преговорите со Европската унија, секако поради Бугарија. Дали е фер поради билатерални прашања Северна Македонија да остане надвор од Европското семејство и зошто поради прашања кои не се директно поврзани со условите за членство во Европската унија, Северна Македонија да не добие датум за старт на преговорите?
We need to step back first of all and recall that in March last year, the leaders of the European Union agreed to open accession negotiations with North Macedonia and with Albania, and that decision still stands. Now, The next step is to agree on what's called a negotiating framework, which would allow for the holding of an intergovernmental conference which would allow negotiations to begin in earnest. The decision-making structure within the European Union requires unanimity for that negotiating framework to be agreed. In other words, 27 member states need to agree. We're not there yet. There are many different areas in which unanimity is required within the European Union, and I understand that sometimes that can result in decisions taking time and being delayed. And I understand the frustration. People want to get on, they want to see negotiations started. But from past experience in similar situations, I think there are two important things. First of all, it's important to redouble efforts to reach an agreement. So Skopje and Sofia need to continue to engage with the aim of reaching a mutually acceptable agreement. And secondly, most importantly of all, North Macedonia needs to keep the reform momentum. The road to the European Union is through implementation of reforms. The faster North Macedonia implements those reforms, the faster it will be able to join the European Union. So it's very important to keep the focus on that too.
Но не ми одговоривте дали е фер или не.
Well, I'm not really going to, I don't want to comment on the bilateral issues. There are issues on the discussions continuing between the two parties. What's important, as I say, is that they really continue those to seek a resolution to them. And then at the same time that the reform path is maintained.
Колку Северна Македонија, воедно и целиот Западен Балкан е важен за Европската унија?
Very important. It remains the strategic objective of the European Union to see North Macedonia in the European Union and see the Western Balkans in the European Union. The leaders of the European Union last year in Zagreb confirmed this once again. You know, the European Union is investing enormously in North Macedonia and in the Western Balkans. You've seen last October the announcement of 9 billion euros for an economic and investment plan which is designed to help the Western Balkans recover from the economic effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. Those investments are not just to make the lives of citizens better here, though they will do that. They're not just to help the country, though they will do that. They're also because we understand that these countries will become a member of the EU family.
Господине амбасадоре, дали воведувањето на етничката графа во личните карти може да направи проблем за Северна Македонија на патот кон европските интеграции?
During the accession process, candidate countries, countries which are engaged in negotiations, need to align with the legislation and the policies, the legislation and the policies of the European Union, the standards. This is called the European Union acquis. That process is important because once negotiation begins, the first thing that will happen will be to look at the level of alignment with the European Union. So what's the standard within the European Union itself? Well, in the European Union, the relevant legislation is something called the General Data Protection Regulation. And this prohibits the processing, by processing what is meant transmission or storing of personal data which reveals ethnic or racial origin, religious or political belief or sexual orientation, or a number of other elements. So that's the standard within the European Union.
Дали мислите дека Европската унија потврли во набавката на вакцините за COVID-19?
On the one hand, this process of procuring vaccines is, I think, demonstrating European principles of European solidarity and European cooperation. And in the course of 6 months, the European Union has managed to obtain commitments for vaccines, 2.6 billion doses of vaccines for European Union and for partners. On the other hand, the President of the European Commission has been very clear, we're not where we want to be in combating COVID-19. As you are very much aware, there have been difficulties in the production, the delivery and the rollout of vaccines as well. And at the same time, all countries have been affected by these mutant variants of the virus, which have accelerated infection rates. But even in that context, the European Union and member states are determined to help partners. So we have contributed 2.2 billion euros to the COVAX facility, which aims to help provide vaccines to 92 low and medium level income countries. So that's very important. And the European Commission at the moment is working on a mechanism with member states on how to ensure an equitable distribution of those vaccines to the Western Balkans, to the neighborhood, to Africa, targeting in particular where there is humanitarian needs and medical workers. But we're not there yet. The discussions continue, so I can't go into much more depth on that. But what I would say is the approach is formed, I think, by the understanding that we all have, that by ensuring the access to vaccines, we're also finally helping to overcome the health risks which are associated with the COVID-19 pandemic.
Дали Европската Унија размислува за воведување на ковид пасоши, бидејќи веќе се знае дека одредени земји поединечно најавија такво нешто?
Yeah, this is a very alive issue. Last week, the leaders of the European Union, meeting virtually in Brussels, discussed this issue and agreed that there needed to be a common approach. And even yesterday, the President of the European Commission made an announcement that the Commission will be proposing making a legal proposal for something called a digital green pass, which is designed to facilitate movement within the European Union and outside for the purposes of work and tourism.
Господин амбасадоре, ви благодарам за времето и за ова интервју.
Thank you very much.
Почитувани гледачи, благодарам и на вас. Останете со нас, следуваат вестите на македонски јазик.